There are words that can change your whole life. Not big, dramatic words, not the kind people shout in movies. Sometimes the words that break you open are whispered, quiet, almost too soft to hear, and they come from the last person you ever expected. My father said 7 words to me on a Thursday evening in November. He was lying in a hospital bed. His skin looked thin, almost see-through. His hands, those same hands that once carried me on his shoulders, were trembling on the white sheet. He looked at me, and his eyes, they were filled with something I had never seen before. Not pain, not fear, it was guilt. He opened his mouth, and in a voice barely louder than a breath, he said, "I need to tell you the truth." I leaned closer. I could smell the hospital soap on his skin. I could hear the machine beeping beside him, steady and slow, like a clock counting down. "What truth, Daddy?" I whispered. He closed his eyes for a moment. A tear slipped out from the corner of his left eye and rolled down into the crease of his cheek. I had never seen my father cry, not once in 47 years. "About you," he said. "The secret is about you." And in that moment, the ground beneath my whole life shifted. Everything I thought I knew, who I was, where I came from, why certain things never quite made sense, all of it began to crack, like ice on a pond in early spring. Slowly at first, then all at once. My name is Grace. I am 47 years old. I am a mother of 2, a wife, a school teacher in a small town in South Carolina. And for 47 years, I believed I knew exactly who I was. But I didn't. The man lying in that hospital bed, the man I had called Daddy my entire life, the man who taught me to ride a bicycle, who walked me down the aisle at my wedding, who held my firstborn child with tears of joy in his eyes. That man had been carrying a secret since before I was born. And he almost took it to his grave. This is the story of that secret. It is the story of love that was bigger than blood, of a man who chose silence to protect a little girl, of a truth that nearly destroyed me and then, somehow, saved me. I want to tell you this story the way it happened. Slowly, honestly, because I think some of you listening might be carrying secrets too, or maybe someone kept a secret from you. And maybe, just maybe, hearing what happened to me will help you find peace with your own. So let me take you back to the beginning, back to a small house on a quiet street where a man and a woman built a life together, and where a little girl with brown curls grew up believing she was exactly where she belonged. I grew up in a town called Ridgewood. It was the kind of place where everybody knew everybody, where you could walk to the grocery store and it would take you 40 minutes, not because it was far, but because you would stop and talk to 5 different people along the way. Our house sat on Maple Lane. It was small, 3 bedrooms, 1 bathroom, a kitchen with yellow curtains, and a living room where the television was always on too loud because my daddy was a little hard of hearing. My mother's name was Loretta. People called her Etta. She was a beautiful woman with dark hair and a gentle voice. She hummed while she cooked. She sang hymns in the morning while she hung the laundry on the line. And she had a way of looking at you like you were the only person in the whole world who mattered. My father's name was Harold. Harold James Monroe. Everybody called him HJ. He worked at the lumber yard 6 days a week. He was a tall man, strong and quiet. He did not talk much, but when he did, people listened. He had a way of saying things simply, without any extra words. Like everything he said had been carefully weighed and measured, the same way he measured planks of wood at work. They were married for 51 years. 51 years of mornings together, of Sunday dinners, of sitting on that front porch in the evening, not saying much, just being close. I had 2 brothers. Daniel was 3 years younger than me, and Samuel was 6 years younger. Danny was loud and funny. He was the one who made everyone laugh at the dinner table. Sammy was quiet and thoughtful, more like Daddy. He liked to build things with his hands, even as a little boy. And then there was me, Grace, the oldest, the only girl. I was close to my mother. We cooked together. We went to church together. She braided my hair every morning before school, and while she braided, she would tell me little things, pieces of advice. Be kind even when it is hard. Always tell the truth, even when the truth is heavy. Love is not just a feeling, love is what you do. I loved her so much. She was my best friend. But with my father, things were different. Not bad, never bad, just quieter, more careful. My father loved me. I knew that. He showed it in his own way. He fixed my bicycle when the chain broke. He drove 40 miles in a storm to pick me up from a school trip when I was scared of the thunder. He stood in the back row at every school play, every recital, every graduation, always there, always watching with pride. But there was something else too, something I could not name when I was young, a distance, a hesitation. Like there was a wall between us made of glass, you could see through it. You could almost touch through it, but it was there. Sometimes I would catch him looking at me, not in a scary way, in a sad way, like he was searching for something in my face, like he was trying to solve a puzzle he had been working on for years. I did not understand it then. I thought maybe he was just tired, or maybe that was just how fathers were with daughters. I did not know any different. My brothers did not seem to notice. They rough-housed with Daddy. They went fishing with him on Saturday mornings. Danny could make Daddy laugh so hard that the whole house shook. Sammy would sit beside Daddy in the garage for hours, handing him tools while they fixed things together, and they did not need to talk. They just understood each other. I wanted that. I wanted that easy, wordless closeness. But with me, it was always just a little bit different, a little bit more careful. My mother noticed, I think. She never said it directly, but she would do little things to bridge the gap. She would say, "HJ, go help Grace with her homework." Or, "HJ, drive Grace to her piano lesson today, I have to rest my back." She was always finding reasons to push us together. And my father would do it. He would sit beside me at the kitchen table and try to help me with math, even though he was not very good at it. He would drive me to my lessons and wait in the car, listening to the radio, and when I came out he would ask, "How did it go?" And I would say, "Good." And he would nod. And that was it. It was love. I see that now. It was love doing its best. But back then, it felt like something was missing. Like there was a sentence he wanted to say to me but could never quite finish. I grew up. I went to college. I became a teacher. I married a good man named Robert, and we had 2 children, a boy named Eli and a girl named Rose. Life moved on the way life does. Slowly and then all at once. My mother got sick when I was 32. Breast cancer. She fought it for 3 years. 3 years of hospital rooms and chemotherapy and hope and fear and prayers. She passed away on a spring morning. The birds were singing outside her window. My father was holding her hand. He did not cry, not in front of us. But later that night, I drove past the house and saw him sitting alone on the front porch in the dark, just sitting there, still as a stone. I almost stopped the car. I almost went up and sat beside him. But something held me back. That glass wall, that invisible distance. I did not know what to say. I did not know how to reach him. So I drove home, and I regret that. Even now I regret that. After my mother died, my father became even quieter. He still came to Sunday dinners. He still played with his grandchildren. But there was an emptiness in him that no amount of laughter or good food could fill. He was not just grieving his wife. I know that now. He was grieving the person who shared his secret. The one other person in the world who knew the truth. And now she was gone. And he was alone with it. The years after my mother's death were strange. Not dramatic. Not full of arguments or falling apart. Just strange. Like the family was a song, and someone had changed the key, and we were all trying to sing along, but something sounded off. My father sold the house on Maple Lane. That was the first thing that surprised me. He had lived there for 35 years. My mother's garden was there. The marks on the kitchen doorframe where she measured our heights every birthday were there. I thought he would never leave. But he sold it. He moved into a small apartment near Danny, who lived 2 towns over. He said the house was too big for one person. He said the stairs were hard on his knees, and those things were true. But I also think he could not stand being in those rooms without her. Every corner held a memory, and memories can be beautiful but also unbearable when you are alone. I visited him every other weekend. It was a 2-hour drive from my house, but I did not mind. Robert would pack a cooler with sandwiches, and I would bring whatever I had baked that week, usually banana bread, because that was Daddy's favorite. Those visits were pleasant, calm. We would sit in his small living room and watch television. Sometimes we talked about the grandchildren. Sometimes we just sat in comfortable silence. It was nice. But I started noticing things. Small things, things that probably would not mean much to anyone else, but they stayed with me. The first thing was the photographs. My father had always kept family photos around the house. On the mantle, on the hallway wall, on the side tables. But in his new apartment, I noticed something. There were photos of Danny, photos of Sammy, photos of my mother, photos of the grandchildren. But very few of me. There was one, just one. My wedding photo in a small silver frame on the bookshelf. That was it. I told myself not to read into it. Maybe he had more photos in his bedroom. Maybe it was just how things ended up when he packed and unpacked. But it sat in my chest like a small stone. The second thing was a conversation with Danny. It was Thanksgiving, about 2 years after Mama passed. We were all at Danny's house. The turkey was in the oven. The kids were playing in the backyard. Daddy was in the living room watching football. And Danny and I were in the kitchen peeling sweet potatoes. We were talking about nothing important. The weather, the kids' school. And then Danny said something offhand that made me stop. "You know, Daddy keeps asking me about you," he said. "Asking what about me?" I said. "Just how you are doing, if you are happy, if Robert treats you right, things like that." "He could ask me himself," I said, and I did not mean it in a bitter way. I just meant I visit him, we talk, he could ask me anything. Danny shrugged. "You know how he is, he has always been that way with you, kind of careful." "What do you mean careful?" I asked. Danny looked at me, and for a second something flickered across his face. Something he was not saying. "I don't know," he said. "Like he is afraid of saying the wrong thing, like he does not want to upset you." I put down the peeler. "Why would he upset me? I'm his daughter." Danny nodded quickly. "Of course, I know, I'm just saying that is how he is. He was always more relaxed with me and Sammy. With you, he was always, I don't know, more gentle, more careful. Like you were something precious he was afraid of breaking." He said it like it was a compliment, but it did not feel like one. It felt like confirmation of something I had always sensed, that invisible wall, that glass between us. I changed the subject. We talked about football, we ate pie. The day moved on. But that night, lying in bed, I stared at the ceiling and thought about it. Why was my father careful with me? Why was he gentle with me in a way that felt more like caution than tenderness? The third thing happened a few months later. I was helping Daddy organize some boxes in his apartment. He had a closet full of things he had never unpacked since the move. Old papers, tax documents, my mother's recipe cards, a box of Christmas ornaments. I was going through one of the boxes when I found a large brown envelope. It was sealed. On the front, in my mother's handwriting, it said, "For H.J. Private." I held it up. "Daddy, what is this?" He was across the room, sorting through a box of old tools. He looked up, and when he saw what I was holding, his face changed. It was subtle. If I had not been looking right at him, I would have missed it. His jaw tightened. His eyes went still, and he set down the wrench he was holding very carefully, like it might break. "That is nothing," he said. "Just some old papers, put it back." "But it says private. Is it important? Maybe we should." "Grace," his voice was not loud, it was not angry, but it was firm in a way I had rarely heard. "Put it back, please." I put it back. I did not say anything else about it. We finished sorting the boxes. We had lunch. I drove home. But I could not stop thinking about that envelope, about the way his face had changed, about the way he said my name not like a request, but like a warning, like I had stepped too close to the edge of something. I began to notice other things after that. Or maybe I had always noticed them, but never let myself put them together. I did not look like my brothers. Danny and Sammy both took after Daddy. They were tall. They had his strong jawline, his broad forehead, his deep-set eyes. People always said, "Oh, those boys are the spitting image of H.J., and they were." But me, people said I looked like my mother. I had her dark hair, her high cheekbones, her small hands. And that was true. I did look like her. But there were things about me that did not look like either of them. My eyes were hazel, a greenish-brown that caught the light in a way no one else in the family shared. My skin was a shade lighter than my brother's and both my parents. And I was shorter than everyone. Mama was tall. Daddy was tall. Danny and Sammy were tall. I barely reached 5'3". These are small things. Genetics are complicated. Children do not always look exactly like their parents. I knew that. I taught basic biology to 8th graders. I knew about recessive genes and variations and all of that. But still, those small differences sat in the back of my mind like a question I was afraid to ask. There was one more thing, one more piece that I had pushed to the back of my mind for years. When I was about 12 years old, I had been playing in the attic. It was a rainy Saturday, and Mama and Daddy were downstairs. I was looking through old trunks, pretending I was an explorer discovering ancient treasures. I found a shoebox full of letters. They were letters between my mother and my father from before they were married. Love letters. I knew I should not read them, but I was 12 and curious, so I read a few. Most of them were sweet and ordinary. I miss you. I cannot wait to see you Sunday. You looked so pretty at the church social. But there was one letter that was different. It was from my mother to my father, and it was longer than the others, more serious. Parts of it I did not understand at that age, but one line stayed with me, burned itself into my memory. I know this is not what we planned, but I am asking you to love this child the way I know you can. Please, HJ, please give us a chance. I did not know what it meant. I was 12. I thought maybe she was talking about me because I was their first baby and maybe they had not planned to have children so soon. That made sense to me, so I accepted it. I put the letters back in the box. I went back downstairs and had dinner. But years later, decades later, that line came back to me. And it did not sound like a woman talking about an unplanned pregnancy with her husband. It sounded like something else, something bigger. Please give us a chance. Us, not me and the baby, not our family, us, like she and the child were a package deal, like she was asking him to accept something that was already there before he arrived. I never told anyone about that letter, not Robert, not Danny, not Sammy. I kept it inside me like a seed buried in dark soil. For years, it stayed dormant. But now, in my mid-40s, with my mother gone and my father aging and all these small observations gathering together, that seed began to grow. And I did not want it to. I really did not want it to. Because the question forming in my mind was one I was terrified to answer. What if Harold James Monroe was not my biological father? Just thinking it felt like a betrayal. This man had raised me, fed me, clothed me, walked me to school, sat through my piano recitals with a proud, quiet smile, paid for my college, walked me down the aisle. How could I even think that? But the thoughts would not stop. They came at night, when the house was quiet. They came in the morning, while I brushed my teeth. They came during parent-teacher conferences at school, when I looked at families and wondered about their secrets too. I began to feel split in two. One part of me wanted to know the truth. The other part wanted to burn the question and never look back. And I might have chosen to burn it. I might have let it go. I might have lived the rest of my life without knowing. But then my father got sick. It started with a cough that would not go away. Danny called me in September and said Daddy had been to the doctor. They ran some tests. They found something in his lungs. Lung cancer, stage 3. He had never smoked a day in his life, but he had worked at that lumber yard for 40 years, breathing in sawdust and chemicals and who knows what else. The doctor said it was occupational exposure. My father had spent his life building things for other people, and the work had been slowly destroying him from the inside. They started treatment right away. Chemotherapy, radiation. For a while, he seemed to respond. He lost weight and he lost his hair and he lost some of that quiet dignity that had always defined him. But he kept going. He kept showing up. That was Daddy. He never quit anything. But by November, the cancer had spread. The doctors said there was nothing more they could do. They moved him to a hospice room in the hospital, a small, clean room with a window that looked out on a courtyard with a single oak tree. Danny and Sammy and I took turns sitting with him. We set up a schedule. We brought him books he never read and food he never ate. We played gospel music on a little Bluetooth speaker because those were the songs Mama used to sing, and we thought they might bring him comfort. He slept a lot. When he was awake, he was tired but present. He asked about the grandchildren. He asked about the weather. He made small jokes that were not very funny, but we laughed anyway because the alternative was crying. One Thursday evening, it was my turn to sit with him. Danny had left an hour before. Sammy was coming in the morning. It was just me and Daddy. The room was dim. The sun had set. The only light came from a small lamp on the bedside table and the glow of the monitors. Outside, the oak tree in the courtyard was almost bare. Just a few brown leaves clinging to the branches, refusing to let go. He was quiet for a long time. I thought he was sleeping. I was reading a magazine, not really reading it, just turning pages. And then he spoke. "Grace." "I'm here, Daddy." "Come closer." I pulled my chair right up to the bed. I took his hand. It was so thin. The bones felt like bird bones. This was the hand that used to lift me up onto his shoulders like I weighed nothing at all. He looked at me, and that is when I saw it. That look I described at the beginning of this story. Not pain, not fear, guilt. "I need to tell you the truth," he said. My heart began to beat fast. "What truth, Daddy?" "About you. The secret is about you." I squeezed his hand. "Okay," I whispered. "I'm listening." He took a breath. It rattled in his chest. He closed his eyes for a moment, gathering strength, and when he opened them again, they were wet. "I am not your father," he said. "Not by blood." The words hung in the air between us. I heard them, I understood them, but my body did not react the way I expected. I did not gasp. I did not cry. I did not pull my hand away. I just sat there, very still, like the world had stopped spinning and I was waiting for it to start again. "What do you mean?" I asked. My voice sounded far away, like someone else was speaking. He took another slow breath. "Your mama, before she met me, she was with someone else, a man named Curtis. Curtis Ware. They were together for about a year. She loved him. At least she thought she did. He was charming, handsome, but he was not a good man. He drank too much. He had a temper. And when your mama found out she was pregnant, Curtis said he did not want any part of it. He left town, just disappeared." My father paused. He looked at the ceiling, as if the story were written up there and he was reading it. "Your mama was 23 years old. Alone, pregnant, scared. Her family was, well, you know how things were back then. A young woman with a baby and no husband. It was not easy. Her parents were ashamed. Her sisters whispered about her. She had nowhere to turn." He looked back at me, and then she met me. We met at a church picnic. She was 3 months along by then, but she was not showing yet. She was so beautiful, Grace, so full of light, even though she was carrying all that weight inside her. I fell in love with her the first time she smiled at me. A tear rolled down his cheek. He did not wipe it away. We courted for 2 months, and then one evening she sat me down and told me the truth. She told me about Curtis, about the baby. She cried so hard I thought she might break apart. She said she understood if I wanted to walk away. She said she would not blame me. He squeezed my hand. His grip was weak, but I felt everything he was trying to say through it. "I did not walk away," he said. "I told her I loved her. I told her I would love the baby too. I told her we would be a family, and I meant it, Grace. I meant every word." "Did you?" I whispered. "Did you really?" "I did," he said. "We got married 2 weeks later. Quiet ceremony, just her parents and mine. And 5 months after that you were born. 6 pounds, 2 ounces. The tiniest little thing with a head full of dark curls. The nurse put you in my arms and you looked up at me with those big hazel eyes. And I loved you. God help me, I loved you so much." He was crying now, not sobbing, just tears, steady and quiet, running down the lines of his face. "Then why?" I asked, and my voice cracked. "Why did it always feel like there was something between us? Why were you so careful with me?" He closed his eyes. "Because I was afraid." "Afraid of what?" "Afraid that if I got too close, you would see it. That you would look in my eyes and know. That you would feel the difference somehow. And then you would ask questions, and I would have to tell you, and it would break your heart. Your mama and I made a decision," he continued. "We decided we would never tell you. We decided you were mine in every way that mattered, and that was that. We put your name on the birth certificate. Harold James Monroe, father. Nobody in town knew different. Nobody except us." "Did Danny and Sammy know?" I asked. "No, nobody knew. Just me and your mama." I sat back in my chair. My hand was still in his. I looked at the ceiling. I looked at the window. I looked at the bare oak tree outside. I looked everywhere except at him because I was afraid of what I might feel if I looked at his face. "There's more," he said quietly. I looked at him. "Curtis came back," he said. "When you were about 5 years old, he heard your mama had married me. He heard she had a daughter, and he came to Ridgewood. Showed up at the house one afternoon when I was at work." My whole body went cold. "What happened?" "Your mama told me that evening. She was shaking. She said Curtis had come to the door. He said he wanted to see his daughter. She told him he had no daughter. She told him to leave and never come back." "Did he?" Not right away. He hung around town for a few days. I went to see him, found him at the motel on Route 9. My father paused. He seemed to be weighing whether to tell me this part. I told him that you were my daughter, he said. I told him that if he came near you or your mama again, he would regret it. I am not a violent man, Grace, you know that. But that day, I meant it. I would have done anything to protect you, anything. What did he say? He laughed at first, called me a fool for raising another man's child. And then he looked at me, and I think he saw something in my eyes that scared him, because he stopped laughing. He packed his bag, and he left, and I never saw him again. I let that sink in. My father, this quiet, gentle, careful man, had gone to a motel and faced down a stranger to protect me. A child who was not his by blood, a child he had chosen. Why are you telling me now? I asked. After all these years, why now? He looked at me with those tired, wet eyes. Because I am dying, Grace, and I cannot stand the thought of leaving this world with you not knowing the truth. You deserve to know. You always deserve to know. I should have told you years ago. Your mama wanted to once when you were in college, but I said no. I was too scared. I was scared you would stop loving me. His voice broke on those last words, and that is when I broke too. Stop loving you, I said. The tears came, not gentle tears, ugly, messy, gasping tears. Daddy, how could I ever stop loving you? You are my father. You have always been my father. But I'm not. You are, I said, and I leaned forward and pressed my forehead against his hand. You are my father. Do you hear me? Blood does not make a father. You made me a father's daughter every single day of my life. We stayed like that for a long time. I do not know how long, minutes, maybe more. The machines beeped. The hallway was quiet. The world outside went on with its business, but in that small room, something enormous was happening. Something was being put down, after being carried for 47 years. When I finally sat up, I wiped my face. My father was looking at me with an expression I had never seen before. It took me a moment to recognize it. Relief. For the first time in my life, the glass wall was gone. He looked like a man who had just set down a boulder he had been carrying up a mountain. He looked lighter, smaller, but also, somehow, more himself, like I was seeing the real Harold James Monroe for the first time. There is something else, he said. His voice was steadier now. That envelope you found in my closet, the one in your mama's handwriting. I remember. I want you to have it, after I am gone. Promise me you will open it. I promise. He nodded, then he closed his eyes. I'm tired, baby girl. Baby girl? He had never called me that before, not once. And hearing it now in this small hospital room with the truth finally spoken between us, it was the sweetest thing I had ever heard. Go to sleep, Daddy, I whispered. I will be right here. And he did. I did not sleep that night. I sat in the chair beside my father's bed and I watched him breathe. Every inhale, every exhale, I counted like a prayer. And I thought about everything. My whole life, rearranged in the light of this new truth. Like looking at a painting you have seen 1,000 times and suddenly noticing a detail in the corner that changes the entire picture. The careful way he held me as a child, not because he loved me less, but because he loved me so much that he was afraid of getting it wrong, of being discovered, of breaking the fragile, beautiful thing he and my mother had built together. The way he watched me from across rooms, not searching for something foreign in my face, but searching for reassurance that I was happy, that his love was enough, that I did not feel the gap he feared was there. The way he pushed Danny and Sammy toward me as playmates, always encouraging us to be close, to be a unit, because he wanted me to feel anchored in this family. He wanted me to belong so deeply that no truth could ever uproot me. He had spent his entire life making sure I was loved. And he had done it while carrying a secret that must have been so heavy. Every time someone said, Grace has her daddy's smile, he must have flinched inside. Every time someone said, that girl is all Monroe, he must have felt the weight of the lie pressing down on him. But he never corrected them. He never even blinked, because to him it was not a lie. I was his daughter. He had decided that the moment he took me in his arms in that hospital room 47 years ago, he had decided it, and he had never wavered. The next morning, Danny and Sammy arrived. I met them in the hallway. They looked tired and scared, the way people look when they know the end is near. I did not tell them. Not yet. I could not. It was too fresh, too raw. I needed time to hold it before I shared it. We sat with Daddy together. He was awake for a little while. He held Danny's hand. He asked Sammy about his woodworking shop. He asked me if I had eaten breakfast. Even dying, he was taking care of us. In the afternoon, while Danny went to get coffee and Sammy stepped out to call his wife, I had one more moment alone with my father. "Daddy," I said, "I have one question." He looked at me. "Do you know what happened to Curtis?" He was quiet for a moment. "He died," he said. "About 15 years ago, heart attack. I heard through a mutual friend. He never married, never had other children." I nodded slowly. I did not feel anything about that. No grief, no curiosity. Curtis Ware was a stranger. He had contributed to my existence, yes, but he was not my father. He had not earned that word. "One more thing," I said. "Did you ever regret it, marrying Mama, raising me, taking on a child that was not yours? Did you ever wish you had walked away that night she told you the truth?" My father's face softened, and he said something I will carry with me for the rest of my life. "Grace, listening to your Mama tell me about you, that was the moment I became a man. Before that, I was just a boy who worked at a lumber yard and went to church on Sundays. But when she told me she was carrying a child and had nobody, and I saw the fear in her eyes, I knew. I knew I was being given a chance to be something greater than myself. And every day after that, watching you grow up, watching you become the woman you are, that was not a burden. That was the privilege of my life." My father passed away 6 days later. On a Wednesday morning, just as the sun came up, Danny and I were with him. Sammy was on his way but did not make it in time. Daddy took one last breath, and then he was still. I held his hand. It was already getting cold. I pressed it to my cheek, and I whispered, "Thank you, Daddy. Thank you for choosing me." Danny looked at me, confused. I shook my head. "Not now," I told him with my eyes, "later." The funeral was small, family, a few friends from town. The pastor spoke about Harold James Monroe. He talked about his work ethic, his devotion to his family, his quiet faith. But standing there beside the casket, I knew something the pastor did not. I knew a deeper story. A story about a man who looked at a pregnant woman he barely knew and said, "I will love your child as my own." And then spent 47 years doing exactly that. Not perfectly, not without fear or struggle, but faithfully, every single day. That is the kind of man my father was. 2 weeks after the funeral, I went to Daddy's apartment to help Danny and Sammy pack up his things. The apartment felt smaller without him, quieter. His recliner still had the impression of his body in the cushion. His reading glasses were still on the side table. While Danny and Sammy sorted through the kitchen, I went to the closet. I found the brown envelope, the one in my mother's handwriting, for H.J. Private. I took it into the bedroom and closed the door. I sat on the edge of his bed, and I opened it. Inside were 3 things. The first was a letter from my mother. It was dated 6 months before she died. She must have written it during her illness, when she knew the end was coming. "My dearest A.J. Asterisk, if you are reading this, then I am gone and you are alone with our secret. I am sorry to leave you with this burden. I know it has not been easy. I know there were nights when you lay awake and wondered if we did the right thing. I wondered too. But then I would watch you with Grace, and I would know. We did the right thing. You gave her a life. You gave her a name. You gave her a father. And not just any father, the best father a girl could ever have. I have one request. Before you leave this world, please tell her the truth. Not because she needs to know, she does not need it. She has everything she needs, but because you deserve to be free of this weight. You have carried it long enough, my love. Set it down. Tell her, and then let her love you the way she has always loved you, completely, and without condition. Yours forever, asterisk. Etta asterisk. I pressed the letter against my chest and cried, not out of sadness, out of gratitude. My mother had known. Even dying, she had been thinking about him, about his burden. She had loved him so deeply that her last written act was trying to take care of him from beyond the grave. The second thing in the envelope was my original birth certificate, not the one I had always seen, with Harold James Monroe listed as father. This was an earlier version. Under father, it said, Curtis Allen Ware. I stared at the name. It meant nothing to me. It was just letters on a page. It was not the name of the man who had raised me. It was not the name of the man who had faced down a stranger in a motel to protect me. It was not the name of the man who had called me baby girl for the first time on his last night of real consciousness. I folded it up and put it back in the envelope. It was a document, nothing more. The third thing was a photograph. It was small, black and white, with scalloped edges. The kind of photo people took in the early days. It showed a young man in a checked shirt, standing in front of a truck, squinting against the sun. I turned it over. On the back, in my mother's handwriting, Curtis, 1974. I looked at the face. I looked for myself in it, and I found almost nothing. Maybe the shape of my chin, maybe the set of my eyes, maybe, or maybe I was just imagining it because I was looking for it. It did not matter. This man had given me biology. My father had given me everything else. I put the photograph back in the envelope. I sealed it, and I put it in my purse. Then I opened the bedroom door and went out to help my brothers. I told Danny and Sammy the truth 3 months later. We were sitting at Danny's kitchen table after Sunday dinner. The grandchildren were outside playing. It was a January evening, cold and clear. I told them everything. I told them what Daddy had said in the hospital. I told them about the letter from Mama. I told them about Curtis Ware. I told them about the birth certificate. Danny stared at the table for a long time. Then he looked up and said, "It does not change anything." Sammy nodded. His eyes were red. "You are our sister," he said. "You have always been our sister, and Daddy was your father, end of story." I reached across the table and took their hands, and we sat there, the three of us, connected. A family, not by perfect circumstances, but by choice, by love, by a quiet man who had said yes when he could have said no, and had never looked back. In the weeks and months that followed, I thought about whether to search for Curtis Ware's family. He might have had siblings, parents who were still alive, people who shared my biology. I decided not to, not out of anger, not out of denial, but because I already had a family, a full, complete, imperfect, beautiful family. I had Danny and Sammy. I had Robert and Eli and Rose. I had the memory of my mother's hymns and my father's quiet love. I did not need anything else. But I did one thing. I went back to the cemetery. I stood in front of my father's headstone. It read, Harold James Monroe, beloved husband and father, 1949, 2023 *. I traced the word father with my fingertip, and I smiled, because it was true. In every way that matters, it was true. "You were the best," I whispered. "You were the best father a girl could have had, and I am sorry I did not tell you that enough when you were alive, but I am telling you now, and I hope you can hear me." The wind moved through the trees. A single brown leaf drifted down and landed on the headstone, right beside my hand, and I chose to believe that was his answer. I am telling you this story for a reason. Not to make you sad, not to make you cry, although I know some of you might be crying right now. I am telling you this because I learned something in that hospital room, holding my father's trembling hand. I learned that family is not about blood. Family is about showing up. Family is about staying. Family is about a man who looks at a child who is not his and says, "You are mine, and I will spend my life making sure you know it." My father was not perfect. He kept a secret he probably should not have kept. He let fear build a wall between us that did not need to be there. He carried a weight that aged him and tired him and made him more cautious than he needed to be. But he did it out of love. Misguided, imperfect, beautiful love. And when the time came, when the end was near and the truth could not wait any longer, he found the courage to speak. He opened his mouth, and he set us both free. If you are listening to this and you are carrying a secret, a truth you are afraid to speak, I want you to know something. The truth is heavy, but silence is heavier, and the people who love you can handle more than you think. My father thought the truth would make me stop loving him. He was wrong. The truth made me love him more, because now I knew the full depth of what he had done for me, not just the bicycle rides and the school plays and the banana bread on Sunday mornings, but the choice. The original, fundamental, life-changing choice to say, "This child is mine." If you are listening to this and someone chose you, a step-parent, a grandparent, a foster parent, an adoptive parent, an uncle or aunt who stepped in when nobody else would, I want you to hear this. You were chosen, you were wanted, And the person who chose you, even if they were not perfect, even if they were awkward or distant or scared, they loved you. They loved you enough to stay. That is the most powerful love there is. Not the love you are born into, but the love someone builds for you day by day, year by year, choice by choice. My father's name was Harold James Monroe. He was a quiet man who worked at a lumber yard and loved his wife and raised 3 children. One of them was not his by blood, but she was his in every other way. She was his baby girl, and she always will be.